Welcome. My name's Ethan Carr, and I'm a health educator here with Indian Health Council. I'm joined by Faith and Alexander of NAMI. So that's the National Alliance on Mental Illness. And yeah, it's national. There are over 600 affiliates throughout the country. And you're from the San Diego one, right?
Mhm.
Okay. So you are a technology program specialist and you are technology development lead. So can you tell us a little bit about that? The technology piece of it, how you serve people through that?
I'm sort of in charge of we have three mental health applications.
Mhm.
So one of them is called Oscar, which is helps people 18 and over, the services and information on there. We have Oscar Junior, which is for youth and families. So that's sort of what those sort of resources and information are tailored towards. And then Alfred and You, which is a special education resource application. And then that application is California wide resources, where Oscar and Oscar Junior are specifically more for San Diego County.
Ah, okay. So it's like help giving mental health tips or helping people access resources.
Yeah, so it has
Yeah.
general information. At least in Oscar and Oscar Junior, it's about mental health and substance use disorder. So we have lots of treatment programs, how to find support groups, psychologists, things like that. And then we have crisis lines and resources if someone finds themselves in a mental health crisis or substance use crisis.
So how do you get the word out? I mean, obviously we're in a podcast right now, but how do you do sort of marketing, getting the word out about NAMI and, how you guys just like um, promote your service?
It's primarily through just outreach, going to community events. A lot of things since COVID are online, so we did a lot of
Mhm.
online sort of outreach. And then I don't know, Faith, got any other? That's pretty much
Yeah,
it.
I mean it's
Yeah.
it's mostly kind of word of mouth
Mhm.
currently. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Mm.
We also do with our applications, we do a lot of application training. So we'll go
Yes.
and teach people about how to use the apps.
Mm.
We like to go to schools if we can. It's great for parents and teachers and stuff
Mm.
like that. But we go through to treatment programs,
Mhm.
stuff like that.
Yeah, another thing that we do is the NAMI has this thing called Smarts training. And during the Smarts training, we do some app presentations. But the Smarts training is basically they're trainings that help you become a mental health advocate, whether you want to get started in working to change policy or anything
Mm.
like that. And so we promote the apps during those as well. And so that's also how uh, we get the word out, basically.
So policy in terms of like rights for people who have mental illness or like accommodations or like what kind of
Yeah,
thing? Like,
basically like anything that revolves around mental health advocacy. We have like one training that is specifically how to tell your mental health story within 2 minutes.
mm,
And the whole 2 minutes thing is because if you ever go to a government meeting, a lot of the time the
mm.
public comment
Oh, yeah,
portion
yeah,
is
yeah.
only 2 minutes.
Right.
And so we train you how to do that. There's another one that is all about policymaking. So it tells you how a bill becomes a law
Mm.
and kind of how our government's structured and how to be able to meet with policymakers and make change.
Ah, okay, nice. So is there like a central NAMI office somewhere and then there's like different affiliates or is it all just like localized?
We do have a main office, but it's more of just a corporate office, so it's just for employees. But we have different programs, have offices in different locations. Like we have one program called Next Steps, which is sort of more in the south area of San Diego. And I know we have a couple up in like Carlsbad in North County.
Oh,
It just
nice.
depends on the program, but yeah, we do have a central office, but we don't really have like clients or
Yeah.
stuff like that come there.
Nice. So tell me a little bit about mental health and, how do you define mental health and what do you consider a mental illness exactly?
I mean, from my perspective, because I got a degree in neuroscience, to
Oh,
me, it's like a chemical
okay.
imbalance in the brain.
Okay.
So that's sort of how I interpret it,
Yeah.
which is sort of what it comes down to. But essentially, a mental illness can be something that affects you on your daily life, it affects your relationships with other people if it's something that you think is an issue.
Mhm.
So that's sort of, when you look at clinically, that's sort of how they start looking at a mental illness, and if it's something that's like chronic, if it's been occurring over time. Yes, it's something that it's constantly bothering you and it's affecting your daily life.
Yeah.
How about you? What do you think?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Alex, I've heard Alex give the analogy of, if you broke your arm somewhere, you would go to a doctor to help get it fixed. That's like your physical health. And so, like, if you're
Mhm.
dealing with, like, if your state of mind is impeding how you just live your life every day and your happiness and stuff, you want to make sure you go to the doctor, and
Hmm.
just like you would for your physical
Yeah.
health. Yeah.
Hmm. So it kind of makes me think with that analogy, like sometimes people don't really acknowledge physical pain. Do you think that there's something about mental illness that maybe doesn't get acknowledged all the time, especially because it's not always visible?
Yeah, that's sort of why I use that analogy, because you can't always physically see when someone's going through a mental health issue or a crisis. There might be some, signs of, if they're anxious and stuff like that, they might be, jittery and stuff like that. But
Hmm.
overall, you can't see what someone's thinking or what they're experiencing all the time. And so there's a lot of stigma sometimes where, like,
Yeah.
you can't see it, so it doesn't exist, sort of aspect.
Yeah. So what inspires you to get into this field about mental health? There's a lot of advocates, and what sort of inspired you to get on this journey for that?
Yeah. I mean, I think like everyone at NAMI has at least some form of like story in mental health, or whether it be themselves or a loved one.
Hmm.
And I have my own that I've struggled with mental health in my life, and
Yeah.
it eventually got to the point where like I started getting help, and for me, always the jobs that made me the most happiest were the ones where I felt like I was actually making a difference. And it
Hmm.
feels with NAMI like I'm actually making a difference. And at least for me, that's why I got into mental health.
Hmm.
But yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, for me, yeah, I struggled with mental issues as a young child, like starting around 10. But at that time, 15 years ago, there wasn't a lot of advocacy for mental health.
Oh, yeah.
So I didn't know about it. They didn't talk to about it in schools. My parents didn't know about it. So like
Yeah.
sort of the symptoms started arising. They thought, oh, this is just a phase. He's gonna get over it. So it just got brushed right under the rug, which I don't blame them for that. It's just like there was no advocacy or information about it,
Yeah.
and it progressively got worse, and then it just lead to a lot of hospitalizations and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And then eventually got treatment and got better, and then went to school psychology, and then got a degree in neuroscience.
So, what kind of keeps people from getting treatment? Is it just not knowing what the symptoms are, or not really wanting to address it because of that stigma? What are some of the key issues with, finding treatment for mental health issues?
I mean, yeah, definitely. I think the number one is like stigma, probably, because like the way we're taught about like mental health, like growing up, or how we're socialized in the media and all of that, it's seen as like, you know, you can be seen as weak or anything
Hmm.
like that for
Yeah,
acknowledging
true.
it. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, that's, I think definitely, it can also be like a cultural thing. So potentially if your family isn't like knowledgeable about mental health or anything, they might end up saying, that, uh, yeah, that you shouldn't end up getting help, or that you should just like tough it out or anything like that. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, that's definitely on the outside of like yourself. I would say, a lot of mental health programs are underfunded. A lot of like therapists are overworked and like have too
Yeah.
many clients, and so it's hard to
Yeah.
get help that way as well.
Yeah. How about yourself?
Yeah, I agree. I think the stigma is one of the biggest ones. I think it's gone a lot better in the last 10, 15 years. About There's been more conversations about it. There's
Hmm.
been more advocacy, education.
Yeah.
Um, I feel like there's more celebrities now that sort of
Yeah.
talk about it or admit it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's
True.
sort of a good thing that, lets, the younger generation and children know that, it's not, you shouldn't be ashamed of having these illnesses or issues, or it's not,
Yeah.
shouldn't be ashamed for getting help either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
the
Yeah.
cultural and religious stuff sometimes, it's sort of
Yeah.
certain
Yeah.
cultures or religions sort of they don't want to acknowledge it or they want to just pretend like it doesn't exist.
Right. Because it's like formally acknowledging it, then people fear they might just get that label,
Yeah.
you
Hmm.
know,
Yeah.
and it's tough to live with that. So it does seem like it's tough to be open. It's a type of thing that's tough to be open about
Yeah.
because, people might have their preconceived notions, or they might think, oh, this person's a criminal, or
Yeah.
so definitely, I took the mental health first aid training, and they talked a lot about language and, understanding that everybody's a person first, a person who has a mental illness, or so forth. And it's easy to lose track of that when people might get ahead of themselves. So I appreciate the work that you two do, just educating the community, letting people know, like, there people with mental illness are all around you. Maybe you're just not aware of it, and part of that is, the stigma just kind of keeps people from talking about it. So the more we can talk about it, the more we can normalize it. The more people will feel open. Like you mentioned, the
Yeah.
celebrities. I know, like Kevin Love, the basketball player, and
Hmm.
different
Mm.
people.
Mm.
So yeah, that definitely helps. Like, what is one thing you would like people with mental illness to know, or like a little, um, could be like a tip to help them, or just something that maybe you think they should be aware of? Could be about NAMI or just general.
Sort of my thing would be like just don't give up. You're not alone. Other people have experienced this. There's people out there willing to help. There's people out there who aren't going to judge you about this, and it does get better if you put the work and effort into it. But yeah, just don't give up.
Mm.
Yeah. And I would say, like, don't give up in specifically with trying to get help, because I feel like the whole process of getting help for mental health can be a little daunting.
Mm.
And, whether, say you go to one therapist and you're not potentially gelling with this therapist, and now you have to transfer, and or with like medication. I had to go through like a whole medication throughout my childhood before I found one eventually that worked. And so,
Oh,
like,
okay.
it can get really disheartening to,
For sure.
like, because you can eventually get to the point where you feel like, well, maybe this is just who I am, and like I just need to like stop trying to get help. But I would highly suggest just keep trying, because you will find something that works.
Yeah, because I probably went through dozens of therapists, dozens
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
medications. They don't psychiatrists and psychologists, they don't have the answers to everything. Everyone is a little different. They respond differently to different treatments. Some people might be good with psychotherapy. Other people might respond better to medications and certain types of medications. And there's tons of different types of therapy out there. So it just depends on the person what's going to work best for them. So it's about
Like,
working with your psychologist, psychiatrist to try to figure those things out.
mean
Mhm.
like talk therapies or
Hmm.
trauma
Yeah,
therapies,
yeah.
or
Talk therapy. Some people can respond well to art therapy or music therapy,
mm.
stuff like that. It sort of just depends what the person finds is beneficial to them, and gives them happiness and hope, and can push through some of the difficulties they're going through.
I imagine it's difficult because to have a therapist, you're meeting with them for the first time, they're asking you all these questions. How do you sort of tell somebody how to navigate that process? Because obviously you want to be open to the therapist because you want them to potentially be able to work with you, but also, you don't know them, right? You don't know if they'll judge you or not. So how do you sort of navigate that? If you're looking for somebody, what do you sort of tell people about how to sort of protect themselves while also sort of being open to potentially, helpful relationship?
That's a good question because I know after seeing a few therapists, I eventually just got, the write up of a therapist of like what they think my diagnosis were. And when I went to a new therapist, I just give them that paper, just like this is what I'm going through. Just like read this, like if you think you can help me with
Oh,
this. So
okay.
they just get a rundown. I don't know if every therapist would, how they would respond to that, but it sort of just cut down the time of having to go through multiple
Oh,
sessions
okay.
for them to find different things, especially if you're not comfortable like going through it, because some people, it can be difficult to constantly talk through the same, especially traumatic experiences.
Yeah, that's
Like
true.
when I work with the homeless and substance use population, a lot of them, had extreme trauma, and so a lot of times the counselors are constantly getting revolved around the door just because, yeah, like Faith
Hmm.
said, the workload or
Yeah,
budgeting, and they
burnout.
constantly
Yeah,
have to retell their story.
it's
Yeah,
aggravating.
it's tough, and like some of them just give up and just like, I don't want to see a therapist anymore because I have to relive this trauma all the time. So that's sort of, one aspect. And yeah, it's just, you just have to sort of push through it because, yeah, again, I went through dozens of therapists just to find.
It sounds like there's probably a balance because I'm sure there are people who want to process stuff as much as possible. They want to try to do as much work as possible. And then there's probably people who maybe could stand to do a little bit more formal. So, how do you sort of get that balance in terms of working through a problem that's probably on its own kind of time, but also, getting help when you need it?
Well, I think sort of sometimes you have to be persistent, like even though, because sometimes depending on the therapy, they'll give you homework to do. And I know
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like that at first. And
Uh,
sometimes you just need to go, like, just power through it and really apply to yourself to that sort of homework that they give you. Like, for me, like, I had a lot of social anxiety, so there was a lot of exposure therapy, like,
oh,
go
yeah.
to a mall, talk to people, stuff like that. So,
Ah,
it's just pushing through that and sort of, give it time. And like same thing with medications.
Yeah.
I know when I was like on antidepressants, after a couple months, I was feeling better. I'm like, oh, feeling better. I don't need this anymore.
Yeah.
So I stop it, and then you're just right back where you started. So it's
mm,
sort of just sort of trusting the process sometimes.
yeah. That must have been tough to go to a mall with social anxiety
Yeah.
and talk to people. Like most people don't talk to people in public places. So,
Yeah, well, it's funny because my first job was actually working at a restaurant, so it was essentially exposure therapy from then on. Because
oh,
then I became a server, and I
oh,
was
geez.
my first day serving was horrible. Like I was just so much anxiety, and my heart
Wow.
was racing. I was sweating, but after a while, I was in the restaurant industry for 10 years. So
Oh, nice.
yeah.
So, what is a misconception about mental illness, and what would you say to address it?
Um, I mean, I think that it is just it's something that you can tough out. It's something that that it can go away. That it's weak for you to potentially get help or anything like that. I know we've
Mhm.
already mentioned it before, but I mean, I think that's like the biggest misconception is that it is something that you should get help for. So.
So, the confidentiality piece, like I imagine people can keep it confidential, but do you think is there a benefit from telling people that you're going through it and you're seeking help to normalize it, or like maybe I guess it depends on the person because that could, if somebody judges you for it, it could be traumatic. So, how do people decide whether they want to disclose, if they're formally seeking help or not?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think for us in our position, like with NAMI, NAMI's all about breaking down stigma. And so we both tell our story in every single presentation that we do.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know if I would suggest that to like every person that's just trying to like get
Yeah.
help or anything, but
Yeah.
I feel like if, obviously for whoever, if they feel comfortable with this person and they do want to start speaking out and doing more advocacy, then I think telling your story can help, but it's whatever the person's comfortable with.
Yeah. What do you
Yeah,
think?
yeah, I would agree with that because, are you talking about just like general like strangers and stuff like that in terms of
Well, it
talking
could
about it?
be just loved ones or people in your
Yeah,
circle.
yeah, I think you should definitely, if you trust the person, reach out to any support system you have, whether it be, a parent, a sibling, a friend,
Do you
anything
work
like that.
with people who have like a loved one or a friend and they want to get educated about their friend's mental illness or something? Or,
Yeah, so we actually have a big class called Family to Family, which is an 8-week course that's free. You just have to sign
Mhm.
up for it. And it teaches people about just mental illness, how to talk with a loved one who has mental illness, teaches you about the different types of mental illnesses. So it's a great education class if people are just trying to find general information and how to, sort of communicate with their loved one who has a mental health issue.
Tell me a little bit about the mental health advocacy piece. So you're both advocates. Tell me a little bit about, your story and what somebody might want to do if they're interested in being an advocate and what exactly it entails.
So we do have some volunteer opportunities, at least at NAMI. I know we have the May event coming up. We're always looking for volunteers during that time. And then, I mean, there's tons of other mental health organizations out there if you're trying to want to try to advocate for mental health. Do those SMARTS trainings.
Yeah.
It teaches you about how to go out to, public forums and stuff like that and advocate for yourself and for others.
What about like groups local to North County? What kind of services are there for people to access in this area?
Well, so NAMI San Diego at least doesn't, I don't think, have any specific groups that are physically in North County. However, most of our services are online.
Oh,
So, you can access them out in North County, basically. Most of
Like-
our support groups, trainings, classes, stuff
We
like
do
that.
have one support group that's in Escondido.
Oh, okay.
It's in like the Park Avenue Community Center or something like that.
So what if somebody doesn't have like a private place? Like do you have people like go in their car or like
Yeah, wherever people want.
where's a good place to sort of like be confidential if you're on a digital kind of group?
Wherever you can find space, if you're, living in a space with a lot of people there, you could, I don't know, go to the bathroom, go outside, yeah, go in your car, or just wherever you can find, wherever you're comfortable, like in that sort of position.
Yeah,
when-
I've done countless therapy appointments from my car. So I think it's fairly normalized now.
You have like a spot that you go to or just like in your
I
on your
mean,
street?
yeah, basically, yeah, there's a spot that I go to that doesn't have a lot of people around, and so yeah, I've done that before.
Yeah, I always like used to see this lookout in La Jolla. People were sitting in their cars talking. I always wondered if they were like doing therapy appointments there.
I mean, maybe.
I mean,
it's
it would be
very-
a good spot to do it.
Get a nice view.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Calming.
exactly. So, here at IHC, we've got evidence-based therapy and medication management, but we also have the traditional cultural practices like drumming, sweating, singing, and beading. So, what are your thoughts on, integrating communal cultural activities like these, um, and to, a more formal mental health practice and, some of the benefits that can come with that?
You know,
Yeah, I mean, well, I think any form of like communal activity like that can definitely help you feel as though you are part of a group, that you're working towards like a better cause or anything. But from the cultural aspect, yeah, I definitely think that helps because I feel like a lot of us can get really used to just saying like, oh, okay, go to therapy, or oh, okay, go see a doctor or anything. But there's so much outside of just normal Western like medicine. I feel like that can definitely help you.
Yeah.
And yeah, if it's something that your culture does to help your mental health, then yeah, I would highly suggest go for it.
Mm-hmm. And then, is there anything else you wanted to mention about NAMI? Like anything you might want to plug or anything that's coming up in the near future that you think might be helpful to know about?
we have that May event, the NAMI Walk that I talked about earlier. Then we have the Youth Mental Health Celebration that we're going to host, I think, in Grossmont Center this year. Those are both in May. So you can come down and just hang out, get resources, live entertainment, maybe some food too. And then, yeah, I mean, you can always just check out our website that we have lots of, again, support groups. That's sort of like our bread and butter. Um, Again, the education class, that family to family is great for family members. We have that counseling within reach, which is online therapy. We have our mobile applications that are free, and then I didn't mention they're in NAMI San Diego's 6 threshold languages. So they're in English, Spanish, Arabic, Tagalog, Vietnamese, and Farsi. So we
wow.
update all the resources and information in those languages.
Nice. Yeah, so we have the behavioral health department here. So we do have some substance use. What did you say? Substance use disorder.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we have some of that. We have the cultural practices, like the groups. We've got a lot of different things that we offer too. So just wanted to make a plug for that. We've got a website, indianhealth.com/behavioral health for people who can learn, who would like to learn more about that. And then we can also have appointments as well. 760-749-1410, selecting option 4. So we've got several clinicians, therapists who are licensed on staff, and a really supportive environment for people, and culturally tailored to the Native community, which is very important as well. So we definitely want people to use the resources that are here in Rincon, and then there also is a little bit of the services are available at Santa Isabel as well. So with that being said, um, we've got Alexander and Faith, and I want to thank them very much for coming on to the podcast, and really important work that they're doing with NAMI, and just, not a lot of conversations about mental health, and it's not easy to talk about. So, definitely give you two props for being able to come on here, tell your story. I don't know how long it took. How long did it take before you felt comfortable telling your story? Because I imagine it wasn't like you realized it and then, you know what I mean? So was it like a year's journey, or?
I mean, within a month, we did our first apps presentation where I had to do my first where I had to tell my story. And so it was kind of like jumping in the deep end, but I got comfortable with it really quick. So I guess like a month for me.
Nice.
But yeah.
Yeah, for me, it took a little while because actually started volunteering at NAMI sort of after my
Oh.
situation. And so we had this program called Ending the Silence, where I'd go to like schools to talk about my mental health story. And, we got trained on it, like how to tell your story, sort of similar to that SMARTS training. And it was really tough at first because it was still pretty raw. It was maybe a year out, and still got like choked up talking about it in that moment. But after time, it just got easier and easier, and that's sort of like it's almost a cathartic sort of experience. It's almost like its own sort of therapy. So if you have struggled with mental health issues and want to advocate, sort of doing that sort of work, going out and telling your story could be helpful in a lot of ways. Just
Yeah.
getting it out in the open and then sort of just pushing through it, sort of.
How do people respond to it? I mean, is it generally positive and they
Yeah,
appreciate the
yes,
openness?
it's always positive. I've had a number of people, crying out in the audience because, especially like when I did it at schools, like children, like teenagers, like it was like their first time like hearing someone like talk about it and seeing someone else who has experienced it. So
Yeah.
it can be helpful to a lot of people. And it's always positive. No one's like got mad at us for
Yeah, no.
telling
Yeah.
our story.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. I mean, that's an amazing thing, regardless of the outreach that you do. It sounds like they're leaving with a base level of somebody being open about their experience, which you don't see all the time. So, fundamentally, that is really, really amazing, what you two do going out in the community. So I really appreciate you two coming on, and thank you very much. So yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thanks so much.